This recording is protected by copyright. No part may be reproduced without the prior permission of the University of South Australia.
Looking at the role of the systems analyst and what it actually means to be a systems analyst and what they pretty much do as a profession, as a career, and how important a systems analyst actually is in terms of what they do and how many people they need to liaise with. So again, as I mentioned last week, I will be providing overview slides and a bit of things that you need to accomplish or objectives for the week. So this is pretty much what we're going to be covering in today's lecture, looking at exactly what a systems analyst does in business and how they act as the interface between, I guess, users and developers of systems and software, what sort of skills a systems analyst needs to have, because they do need to have quite a diverse skill set in order to perform the job that they do. And think about different attitudes, different behaviours. Think about if they move from one organisation to another, about the ethics of the role and of the importance of the role that they have, and determining what information that they take with them as a learning experience, but also not revealed to other organisations. And although we talk about systems analysis and a systems analyst, there are a number of different job titles out there that pretty much align with systems analysis and being a systems analyst. So we'll have a look at those as well. So the reading for today is the online chapter A. So just to clarify, there is the textbook which you can purchase In addition to the textbook, there are 3 online chapters. 2 of those I'll be covering in this course. This week's chapter is based on one of those online chapters, and you can download those as a zip file, and they do come as PDFs, from the course website. And there is a link there that says link to online chapters. So the reading is there and is available for you, and these are extras in addition to the physical textbook itself, or the e-version of the book. So I guess we need to be wary about information systems and the importance and role it has in today's society, and I guess understand how quickly IT changes. We agree, right? IT is changing at a very rapid pace. As individuals, we like to keep up with the latest tools and trends. How do organisations deal with that? Can they afford to keep upgrading their systems and their software every 6 months or every year? Yes? No? No, obviously not. So it's really important for organisations to understand the importance that IT plays within their organisation, and that when you're embarking on a task of looking at your information systems, perhaps overhauling your information systems, or even perhaps getting new information systems, organisations need to think about the implications of how long is this going to last for our organisation. So you need to have, I guess, an information systems plan within your organisation to know the lifespan of what you're about to embark on, and how long is this going to affect your organisation, and is it going to be outdated by the time you even install this piece of software or this information system. So IT does have dramatic impacts on organisations. So does the technology used to support that IT infrastructure or the information systems. So we've got systems, we've got people, we've got software, we've got hardware. All of these things, put them together, then everything hopefully seamlessly works. But if some changes occur, then organisations obviously need to upgrade their systems in some form to ensure that their organisation is being as productive and profitable as possible. So we need to use, I guess, technology to our best advantage to ensure that the solutions that are within organisations are helping them be as effective as possible. How can you do that? Well, part of systems analysis is understanding what is inside an organisation and how information systems can help improve what goes on in an organisation. Okay, without an analyst and without the right team involved in your organisation, you can't establish whether you are in fact working at your maximum level and at your best productivity levels. So just a few definitions to kick us off and get started. Basically, analysis and design. So systems analysis is pretty much, and you'll go through this one in, in today's tutorial if you haven't already had a tutorial this week, or in this week's tutorial I should say. Basically, with analysis, we want to understand the requirements, understand what is needed by an information system that has been approved for either purchase off the shelf, making it in-store, or developing it in-store, or getting others to outsource the contracting of that software and that system. But we need to understand what the system actually needs to do and what it needs to accomplish. Not always easy to get that information from users because they often don't know themselves what an organisation needs to do. Hence, we have systems analysis. The following step after analysis is systems design. As I said, you'll be doing that in the following year of your studies. It's pretty much, we start going into a little bit more detail in terms of looking at the components of the system. How is the system going to be physically implemented? What do the interfaces look like? What do the databases look like? Developing and designing those components that work towards ensuring that we actually realise the potential of the system that has to be developed. Systems analyst, well, that's the person who acts as the interface between the business, okay, and the people that are designing and developing the system. So they need to liaise with quite a few stakeholders in order to make sure that they're understanding what needs to be developed. So that information can then be passed on to the designers who can then design the system. You can't design something unless you know what you're designing. You can't know what you're designing unless you understand what needs to be designed. And you need to get that information as a systems analyst from various users, customers, business owners, business managers, stakeholders, whoever you need to speak to get the different bits of information to gather that understanding. As a systems analyst, they need to be able to use various tools and techniques to carry out their job. And as we go through the course, you'll see that we're developing a number of different models, i.e. different pictures, and representing different parts of a system with those various models. Now, if you don't understand the tools to use to develop those models, you can't develop the models. If you don't understand what techniques are available to gather the requirements from your users and stakeholders, you can't employ the right techniques. So as an analyst, you need to understand various tools as well as various techniques to be able to gather the requirements for a system. I've got some examples here of thinking about the types of problems that need to be solved. And it's about half a dozen, but I won't go through all of them. But it's just an indication of defining something that's going on, or a need or a want, and then rephrasing that in terms of the organisational problem that needs to be addressed through the use of information systems or technologies. Let's have a look at the first example. Customers want to order products at any time of the day or night. Correct? We as customers, wherever we go, whatever we do, we want to be able to buy now. Regardless of what time now is, you want to be able to buy things 24/7. So what's the actual problem from an organisational perspective that is selling those products or making those products available to us as customers? The problem is how to process those orders around the clock without adding to the cost of the item. How do we create an information system and develop a system that is safe, that is secure, that is reliable, that is available 24/7, without having to employ another 10 people to ensure that it's running as it should, now that we're working on a 24/7 model, as opposed to, for example, maybe a 9 to 5 face-to-face business model? So that's one problem that needs to be solved through the use of information systems. In the next page, we've got marketing. Marketing with an organisation. They want to better anticipate customer needs by tracking purchasing patterns and buyer trends. How many times do we receive emails from places where we've purchased things that give us personalised emails and say, "Hi, such and such, you know, we noticed that you last bought this and this is soon to be on sale. Do you want to buy some more?" Anyone got any emails like that? Doesn't happen magically. They must be somehow gathering our data and using that as a tool to determine buying patterns and trends, and then somehow marketing themselves even further to try and get extra sales from you as an individual, because they want you as a repeat customer. So in this scenario, the problem is how to collect and analyse information on customer behaviour that marketing can put to use. And that's exactly what some organisations are doing. They're gathering that data, analysing it and using it to sell or, you know, get you back as a repeat customer. I'm always getting them from Coles and Woolies, and if you spend $50 this week, we'll give you a voucher or whatever. They drive me insane. But they're using data based on purchases I've made and my buying patterns to try and get me back and entice me to become a repeat customer. So it happens through the use of tools and technology and information system and gathering metrics and gathering data and carrying out some sort of reporting and analysis on that data to then use that to their advantage to try and gain more business. And again, I'll do the second one. Employees demand more flexibility in their benefits programs and management wants to build loyalty and morale. So the problem for the organisation is how to process transactions and give them different types of accounts within the organisation. So organisations can provide flexibility for their employees and allow them to do things more efficiently in an online environment. So you can see, regardless of where you work or what you do or what the organisation is, I've given you half a dozen examples of things that occur on a daily basis that can be seen as problems for an organisation if the organisation is not dealing with them in the most efficient manner. And these problems are there to make the organisation work better, work smarter, not harder, and obviously make them sustainable in the industry that they're operating in, and obviously increase profitability. That's what business is all about. But it's all about using information systems to harness that knowledge and make the use of it as best as possible. So what's an analyst's approach to problem solving? I've got, how many? 8 steps there, which is a bit of a breakdown or a guide as to where do we start as a systems analyst and what do we do when we are faced with something? How do we deal with it? And I've listed them there, and we pretty much need to think about the problem and do some research to understand what the problem is within an organisation. To then verifying, to defining the requirements, to looking at possible solutions, because once you understand the problem, is there always going to be one solution to a particular problem? No. So you need to always think about different options or different ways of going about solving the problem. And as a systems analyst, that becomes part of your role to A, understand the problem, and then to define the requirements for solving the problem, and is there a possible set of alternative solutions and pathways that can be taken to solve that problem. Once you've got your recommendation of which problem to work with, then you define the details, implement it, and monitor it, etc., etc. So what are the types of systems that actually help solve some of these business problems that I just identified, plus the many more that are out there as part of daily life? Again, a few more definitions. What is a system? It's pretty much a set of components that are interrelated, that work together. Together being a key word, to achieve some sort of outcome. An information system, on the other hand, is a set of components that collect, process, store, provide output for, etc., to complete a business task. So we need to think about getting information, and if it's not getting information, processing and producing some sort of output at the end, it's not really classified as an information system. If the same information that goes into the system is the same information that comes out of the system, it's not really an information system. Okay? It needs to be manipulated, needs to be stored, needs to be processed, and we need to get some sort of relevant output from the information system. Do you think we only get one type of information from an information system, one set of output? What do you think? We've got an information system. Is it going to only produce one set of output? No. There are various things that can come out of an information system. Does only one person use an information system? No, we can have lots of people using an information system. Information systems. Do we have one information system in one organisation? Or does an organisation have many information systems? Many information systems, okay? One organisation does, well, obviously it's going to vary in the size, nature and complexity of the organisation, but typically an organisation has more than one information system to support the functions of that organisation. There may be different functional units, there may be different functional areas, but there are going to be different types of information systems to support the people working in the different areas within the organisation. An information system may also have subsystems, which is part of a larger system. But basically the information system gathers information, processes it, stores it, and provides some sort of output information that can help the business do what it does and complete its business tasks. Some of these things might be terminology that you've come across with, maybe part of programming. So we've got functional decomposition, where we break a system down into its component parts or into smaller subsystems. Why do you think it's important to think about breaking something down into smaller parts or smaller subsystems?
Easy.
You can manage it easily, okay? We can manage, I guess it goes with anything you do. If you break a task down, a large task down into smaller chunks, you can then sort of look at each chunk individually as well as how each of those things form the whole, okay? And you can then integrate those things because we have systems that need to be integrated, okay? But sometimes it's easier to break a task down into smaller tasks or systems into functions or systems into subsystems to make sure that those components are working as individual components or standalone components. Then you can start building your system and making it bigger and better and ensure that all the parts actually fit together and work as they do. We also have something called a system boundary that separates the system and its environment where the inputs and the outputs must cross. We have something called an automation boundary, which is a separation between the automated part of the system and the manual part of the system, because some systems need some sort of manual operation or they need intervention from a user to help that system do its main function. Okay, so we have automation boundary, we have a system boundary, and I'll show you a diagram which shows you the distinction between the two. Here's an example of an information system, or information systems and subsystems. You can see here we have an organisation that has 4 systems and 4 subsystems. So the 4 systems are CRM, Customer Relationship Management, Accounting and Financial, Manufacturing and HR Management. So we've got 4 systems. Customer Relationship Management also has 4 subsystems: Sales, Account, Production, or Product and Technical Support. Okay, so just visually you can see that if this were in an organisation, which most likely it is, there are a number of information systems that are used to support that organisation. What do we have to make up a system? Okay, we know that if something is broken in terms of using a tool or a technology, how frustrating it is. And sometimes we forget the importance of each of these components that can make everything seamless and work without us having to think too hard about it. But in terms of system components, we need to think about the inputs, the outputs, the software, the hardware, the data, the procedures, the wiring, the networking, and the people that are using those systems. Okay, because not every system works magically by itself. We need people to sometimes provide information to systems. We need people to use those systems. We need people to gather information from those systems and make use of those information systems. So all of these components are just as important as the other. This gives you an example of what I was referring to in terms of the system boundary and the automation boundary. So the automated part of the system, which is done by the computer, is the automation boundary. The system boundary takes into consideration the manual part of the system, tasks that are completed by the people. Then outside of the system boundary is the environment surrounding the system. So where is this system actually situated and location? What is the environment this system is in? And that's pretty much an overview of those definitions, I guess, to give you an understanding and a representation of how they fit. Again, different types of examples of systems. Can someone give me an example that's part of a lot of our daily lives of perhaps a customer relationship management system? Or any of these systems. You can give us an example of an accounting system.
Give you an example of one.
Yeah. Which one?
MYOB.
MYOB. That's an example of an accounting and financial management system. Okay. Does many things, supports lots of people, installed in many organisations. Customer relationship management systems. How many of you have rung someone and had that lovely voice at the end saying, please tell us in so many words what your problem is so we can direct you to someone somewhere in the globe, although they don't say that, or someone somewhere within the organisation? Has anyone come across those types of phone calls or had that experience? Yes. What? Too often. Why do you think they have those systems set up that way? What's the benefit? A, to the organisation, and B, supposedly to the customer.
Supposed to, other than being cheaper for the organisation.
Why is it cheaper for the
They
organisation?
don't have to employ someone to be there doing it.
They don't have to employ someone being there doing it, taking the initial call.
It should be quicker to get to your destination or what you require.
Should be quicker to get to your destination or what you require. In terms of speaking to the right person the first time who's got the expertise for that particular area based on the menu options that you chose. Rather than having to ring up and talk to Joe and give Joe your scenario, and Joe's going to say, sorry, I can't help you, I'll put you on to Mary. Then Mary will say, sorry, they put you through to the wrong department, and then go to Fred, Joe and James, and then finally get to Alicia, who can help you with solving the problem once you feel like hanging up, if you haven't hung up already. So it's to save the organisation money, but the aim is to provide us as customers with a better customer experience at the end and direct us to the appropriate person at the appropriate time. Doesn't always work, quite often leads to frustration. What does that tell you about that organisation, perhaps, if all their customers are frustrated by the systems that they've employed or deployed or whatever they've done? Systems are unreliable, yep.
They need someone to come in and fix the system.
They need to get someone to come in and fix the system. What haven't they done properly?
We actually spent 2 weeks doing that. We actually rang the numbers ourselves.
So you worked for the organisation and you rang the organisation.
We rang our own numbers. We went through a whole exercise of going through all those IVR numbers.
Yep.
Push this, push that, to actually map out what's right, what's wrong. So if we don't look at what we're asking the customers to do and understand the frustration at that end by experiencing it ourselves, then there's no way we can fix it.
That's exactly right. If there are... Yes?
Can I just say that I will not name the organisation,
No, we don't need to name organisations.
but there are quite a few who have
Oh, you can
not,
name ours as good.
who have not, I know where you're from, but who have not done. For example, one organisation is Western
Yes. That's right. So the frustration is there. So that what was told here is there is a frustration that you ring the number and just keep going into a loop, okay? You don't get to where you want to go. If the organisation hasn't done their bit and put themselves in the situation and tested all this functionality, they can't understand the problems that are going on. Or if they're being alerted to the problems, they need to do something about it. Because, you know, 1 or 2 bad experiences and you're not going to ring up again. And word of mouth is very powerful. Because today it's not just word of mouth, it's word of social media. And we know how quickly social media can impact an organisation or an individual or anything that quick. And it's literally that quick. So we need to think about what we're doing as organisations. So there are many types of examples. Managing your human resources, knowledge management systems, gathering knowledge from an organisation, collaboration support systems. Can someone give me or think of an example? I mean, you may have used some of these systems that enables geographically distributed personnel to collaborate on projects and tasks. Yay for technology. What are some of the systems that some of you may have used to collaborate and work with people on projects and tasks where you may have been geographically distributed? Any examples? Autodesk. Vault. Skype. Skype. What else? Sorry? Moodle. Facebook.
Yammer, it's an internal one.
Yeah, internal one. Okay, we can do some video calling. Okay, you've got your Skype calling. Google Docs. Is a repository where we can... Wow, was that funny? Oh, yeah.
SkyDrive, what is it?
OneNote. One SkyDrive, something. Every day something new comes out. But the point is that you don't necessarily all have to be sitting in the same room, working on the same thing every time you want to work on something. And I strongly encourage you to use tools and technologies to your advantage to help you work with others in your studies, in particular when you have group assignments. Use the tools, harness the technology to your advantage. How are these types of systems beneficial for organisations?
Allows me to be here.
Allows you to be here. That's a good thing. I'm glad you're here.
It saves cost to the organisation because if you have an expert in one particular field, you don't necessarily have to fly them there to get their expertise. You can just cover.
Yeah, sharing expertise and alleviating the need for people to obviously travel if they don't need to. The role and the life generally of a CEO, executive, a senior executive, whatever, if in a multinational company is generally a lot of travel. If organisations can avoid that travel, then they're one step ahead of the rest. Not only that, it can open many doors for organisations that have people working on projects. Not only can you work on projects within your state, hometown, you might be able to work on local projects, national projects, international projects, because you can collaborate them using the tools and technologies. And some of you may have that experience of doing that, which can open up many doors for people within organisations. So just a few examples to show you the different types of systems that can be used in organisations. And again, here's a visual representation of the types of stakeholders and people that are interacting with those different types of systems that all have various databases connecting those systems together. So what does a systems analyst need in their personal bank of tools, tips and tricks to be good at what they do? They need to have some knowledge and they need to have a really good skill set. But it's important to understand that each one of these is just as important as the other. Yes, Dom?
They have to be able to empathise with every single person.
Good to see that you've been thinking about design thinking. Empathising. How many of you did empathising in design thinking? See, I can tell Gay and Kirsten that you've brought the course into this one and they'll be thrilled. You've got to know how to empathise. I think someone else had their hand up. They all like that one. Okay, you've got to empathise. But you've got to have all these three different things. You've got to have a set of technical skills and technical knowledge. You've got to have business skills and business knowledge. You've got to have people skills and people knowledge. You need all of those things as a systems analyst to think about what each of those things involves in terms of your knowledge and experience. And we'll look at those in a little bit more detail. What do we talk about when we mention tools? Applications, okay? Software application that assists the developers or the systems analysts in developing or creating models or components required for a project. So you need to come up with some sort of artefact, whether it's a pretty picture, whether it's a table, whether it's an interview, whether it's a questionnaire. You need to have the tools to be able to develop those artefacts and show them to your users and say, is this what you meant? Is this what it's supposed to look like? Are we on the right track? Are we getting there? And there are various techniques involved in gathering requirements and gathering information from users to understand the requirements for a system. And there's just a number of techniques that can be used. Project planning techniques, cost-benefit analysis, interviewing techniques, modelling requirements techniques, different types of techniques, okay, that need to be understood and used. In terms of technical knowledge and skills, these are the things that a systems analyst generally needs to know in order to do their job. Understand what computers are, obviously, files, database, storage, hardware, inputs, outputs, networks, programming languages, tools, technologies. In order for you to make suggestions to an organisation about where they need to be, you need to understand where they're currently at. In order to understand where they're currently at, you need to have some sort of technical knowledge and expertise to be able to provide that advice. What if you aren't proficient in all of these things? As a systems analyst, what is the best possible thing that you can do? Ask supervisors. What else can you do?
Learn from the client themselves.
Learn from the client themselves. So one thing that's really useful about being a systems analyst and or a project manager is knowing what to do when you don't know the answer to something. Knowing who to ask to get the answer. So it's about being resourceful, not necessarily knowing the answer to everything. But yes, systems analyst definitely needs to have some technical knowledge and skills, as well as business knowledge and skills. If you go into an organisation and say, I know everything about everything and you're doing everything wrong and you should scrap all your systems and I'm the best systems analyst and I've done everything and you should follow my lead because I did it in that organisation and they're really rich. If you go in with that sort of attitude, is that demonstrating, business knowledge and skills? Is that going to get you a good rapport with that organisation in the first place, after you've just told them that what they're doing is wrong?
It just demonstrates arrogance.
It demonstrates arrogance for a start. Okay, arrogance is not something that is widely accepted in the business community. Yes, it exists, and yes, there are people out there, but if you want to be successful as a systems analyst in your role, demonstrating arrogance is one of the things that you definitely shouldn't do. Okay, because then your users are not going to give you your requirements. They're not going to want to spend time with you because the only way you can understand what's going on is by speaking to people and having conversations with them. If you can't even get a conversation with them, you can't do your job efficiently. So you need to understand organisations. Is every organisation structured and managed the same way? No. And you don't necessarily know the answer to that question when you may enter that role. So you sometimes need to do some asking around.
We train our staff. One of the things we do say is everyone may, or many people will have eggs for breakfast. The end result is having the breakfast. But there's many ways to cook the eggs.
That's right.
And each organisation can have many different ways of doing something.
That's exactly right. Organisations are all there to do business and make money. How they do that can vary quite significantly. Okay, so you need to understand. The first thing you need to understand is that every organisation is different. If you've got that understanding and appreciation, you need to have the flexibility to work towards those different structures and management levels in organisations in order to be able to speak to the right people. Because if you're trying to gather the requirements for a system and you don't understand how the organisation operates and works, you might be talking to the wrong people altogether and getting the wrong requirements for what this system is actually supposed to be doing. Because it's often a scenario where information systems are forced on organisations and people have to use them, but for some reason, somehow, the people that have to use the systems haven't actually been consulted and they get shoved into some sort of working environment with this brand new system that doesn't actually work as it's supposed to and doesn't actually make their life better, it makes it worse. And that's not a good scenario for an organisation to be in. To have something installed and implemented for the greater good, where in fact it's not actually making their environment for the users of that system more productive. People knowledge and skills, okay? Let's face it, as a systems analyst, you need to not sit in a corner and work on your computer 24/7. You need to be able to speak to people. And there are different people that you need to speak to. And you've got to have a great skill set. Interpersonal skills is very important. Arrogance is what we don't want to see. We want people to be able to communicate well, articulate the requirements, and somehow skillfully gather the requirements from users when they themselves sometimes don't know what they need or want. And be able to talk to multiple stakeholders to take some sort of system from an initial idea to final implementation. So, you've got to build that rapport with people to gain their trust and their confidence in the first instance. and obviously negotiate. You've got to have some great negotiation skills because there are going to be resources involved, such as people, time, and money that needs to be spent to develop this particular system. And you've got to obviously manage sometimes conflict within organisations or, people with different attitudes towards getting this particular project done. So as an analyst, you've got to be many things, but they are some things that an analyst must be effective in. Teaching, confident, collaborator, manager, leader, fire putter-outer, whatever you want to call yourself. There are many roles that you can take on as a systems analyst and have multiple roles in varying parts of the day sometimes, or a week, depending on who you are talking to and what part, what stage of the project you are at.
One other thing is, one thing that we also do is we're also effective learners. As analysts, you may uncover a method or a process when you're visiting a client that will help many other clients. So you're also learning from your experience.
Most definitely.
Taking that to the next spot.
As was just mentioned, as a systems analyst, you must be a learner. But another thing that I'll talk about, and I'm going to cross both courses, but I'm allowed to because I teach them both. As a systems analyst and as a project manager, one of the things that we talk about, and that's really valuable, is learning from your experiences and documenting those experiences so you can either impart those experiences onto other people or take them with you on your journeys from one place to another. And really, that's what distinguishes an average project manager from a good project manager, from a brilliant project manager, because it's not all about all the successes you've had, it's about the lessons you've learned along the way in order to achieve those successes and those maybe small wins in some cases that can turn into big wins or big successes in the latter years. Same principle applies with a systems analyst. You need to learn from your customers. You need to think about transferring what you've learned into another scenario. And that's one of those is an interpersonal skill that we call personal transferable skills. Okay, and we'll talk about those, something as part of your career, something that industry is crying out for from our graduates. Personal transferable skills. Can you transfer the skill you've learned in one course into another? Can you transfer that lifelong skill from one scenario to another? What are those personal transferable skills? What are those learnings that we can have as individuals to take them with us in our professions as well as in our personal lives? So there are many different types of careers. Some of you might end up being systems analysts one day, some of you may not. Or it may have a slightly different term in terms of what your job is actually called. But they cover, many organisations, many roles. You may be working as a systems analyst, not as part of your main job, but you may have to do some sort of analysis in what you do. As part of your projects in your final year, you'll have to do some sort of analysis. Yes?
Systems analyst, is that a strong leader to become the CIO of a company?
I think there's probably, it's a path, string, lead.
It's a very good feather in your cap.
Yeah.
Very good bow in your
Yeah. And we've got a couple of industry people here, so that's why you've got industry people that have worked in the industry and they're here to achieve, their qualifications in the room, so we can learn from them as well. So there are quite a number of careers out there, and here's just a list of some of the job titles you may have. I just want to finish off with this video. It's not very long, and you'll miss it if you're not quiet. So I'll just get you to wait 1 second. I'll just play this video. It's really quick.
Here's your scientifically selected career.
Systems analyst, systems analyst.
I got us. All right, you ready?
Here's your scientifically selected career.
Systems analyst, systems analyst, systems analyst.
Systems analyst.
All right!
So he's really excited about being a systems analyst. Okay, that's it for today. See you next week.